Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are going to get started with CSS now. And so let me share my screen and show the calendar to show where we are and the schedule and what the plan is for our learning. So we will introduce CSS this lecture. Then in the afternoon lecture today, we are going to talk about the box model and how to use the CSS rule inline block. Then after that lecture, we are going to break out into groups and do a group activity relating to CSS. And then we're going to present our work after our group breakout session. And then we have the rest of the day to work on our assignments. So by the end of the day, we want to finish these practice assignments, styling, button up, and the core assignment, plotting your blocks. Okay, there's links to each assignment here. So these are the end of the day goals. And the homework is to read about Flex. Now, Flex is a way to do, and we'll go into this in the lecture, but a Flex is one method to achieve a goal that's much better. It's more in depth than what we'll introduce today, which is inline block. So inline block, what we'll talk about, it's going to be like the training wheels. It's going to get us a good understanding of how blocks of divs on an HTML and using CSS page work. But then we're going to learn an even better way tomorrow. But today's understanding will give us a good foundation of why Flex is a better way. Okay. And then on Thursday, we'll learn some position rules. We don't want you using these rules, only very sparingly. So if I see you guys in your projects using position or the CSS rule position or float, I'm going to let you know that's not something we want you to do. Discourage you from doing that. And if we see that on the test, then you'll be marked down. And then we'll recreate a website at the end of Thursday. And then that'll be it for CSS. We'll be doing JavaScript on Friday. Okay, so let's get into today's lesson. Okay, so let me fully expand my screen here. Let's go even further. Awesome. Okay, so CSS, what is it? Can anyone tell me what CSS stands for?
Cascading style sheets.
Yes. Can anyone tell me what cascading means? Cascading means falling down from top to bottom. And we'll get into why it's called cascading in just a little bit, but let's go over a broad overview of what CSS is and what it does. Why do we use it? Okay. So it stands for cascading style sheets, and CSS is used to style our HTML. So again, if HTML is the skeleton of our page, the text, the bullet points, the links, CSS is the skin and clothes, okay? So now we're going to give a bit of stylish flavor to the text that we are putting on our page. All right? So here it is, images that are serve that analogy. And JavaScript will add some functionality, make it stand out even more. Okay. How do I get out of here and zoom out? All right, here's some examples of what CSS can do. Okay, it can change the background color of the whole page or a certain section of the page. It can change the font style of the text that you're writing. It can change the font height, size. It can change the font color. You can make a square div a round div. You can make images, backgrounds of things that you would see text in, maybe the background of the whole web page that you're working on. You can size and arrange divs on our page. And this is a very, this is last but not least, the way that we'll be using CSS this afternoon to arrange divs on our page. Okay. So now that we have all these functionalities that we can use CSS for, we can style our page. Imagine the possibilities of things that we can create. Okay. Look at this page. It's a profile page. It looks like a fancy, expensive page, but you should be able to create something like this in a couple weeks for yourself. I have no problem making something like this. Okay. So we want to get you to that level. I want to get you to that level. Well, the TAs do too. Okay, so all of us want you to be able to do this, and then this will be able to sell you as a developer to get that job that you're looking for. Okay, so what does CSS look like? We are going to add rules, and the rules look like this. Okay, we're going to select certain properties of our HTML. We're going to add certain rules to them to give them that style. Okay, so this is a snippet of someone working on CSS. And so how do we apply CSS now to our HTML? Let's look at how we can connect it. All right. Step one is to create the CSS file. So you want to create a style.css file in the same folder as your HTML file. This is not an absolute rule, okay? But for now, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to create a CSS file in the same folder as your HTML file. And then in the head of your HTML file, we're going to create that link, okay? So after this slide presentation, I'll show you exactly what I mean. Okay, there are multiple. So now that our files are connected, once we attach that link in the head of our HTML that grabs our file, our CSS file that we would have created, now that it's connected, we want to connect the rules that we would write on our CSS to specific parts of our HTML page. For example, what if we wanted all of our H1s on our page, or there should only be one, all of our H2s on our page to be blue. Okay, that's the theme of our page, that all H2s have the color blue. Well, we can target H2s now in CSS. Or if we wanted a specific H2, we could target that by the selector we give it. So there are different types of selectors. All right, we're going to be able to access our HTML page once we are connected to it through IDs that we would give our HTML tags, our classes that we can give our HTML tags, by the HTML tags, what they're called themselves. So you can call out just all the P tags, all the H tags. Those are the element selectors. And then there's the star selector. That star selector selects everything. And then there's pseudo classes. We don't need to worry about that. We just need to get our head around the first four. And that will give us enough understanding to be able to create that web page that you saw earlier, something fancy like that. Okay, so we're going to connect our CSS to our HTML. And then lastly, we're going to use CSS to size and arrange divs on our page. Okay, so we're going to not just see bullet points and text in a column on the left-hand side of the page stacked on top of one another. Now we can add certain size properties to our divs and tell the HTML where they should live on the page, where they should exist when you view the page. Okay, maybe you want something to be like a nav bar where it stretches horizontally across the screen, or maybe you want things to be arranged in however order you had designed the page, or however order you're assigned to work on an assignment. We'll now be able to take blueprints, see how they're arranged, and then be able to create those blueprints. So that's what our next few assignments are going to be. Okay, so now that we had an introduction, let's go into our course material here on the platform and go over how to create that CSS file and how to connect it. Okay, so I'll go ahead and share Visual Studio. And here you can see I've created an index.html. So this is my starting point. So let's create our boilerplate, our body. Okay, so let's make a CSS example. And I'll say here, hello world. Okay, this should be working. Let's just test it, see if everything's going well. So open with live server. Okay, there we are. Hello world. Now let's create and connect our CSS. So what I want to do is find the folder that my index.html is in. I'm going to work inside that same folder, and I'm going to create a CSS file. Okay. So who can tell me what I said we were going to call it from the slide presentation? Who can remember?
CSS.
There we go. Style.css. And here's our blank CSS file. I want to see it next to my HTML file. I want to see the side by side next to my HTML file. So what I'll do is I'll click this icon here at the top right. Looks like a square with the line in the middle. I call it a book. It's the split editor icon. So you can split your editor to make CSS appear on the right while your HTML is on the left. Okay. Now you can see both files at once. So now we need to connect our CSS. We've created it. Now we need to connect it. The way to do that, the shortcut to do it, and this is the way you can remember how to do it, is by saying, what do I need to do? I need to link my CSS. So type in link : CSS. Then press enter. And then it will type for you it'll pre-fill what you need to write to target your CSS. And you see here in this href, you remember the href from the A tag, how it targets a link. Well, in this href, we're targeting this file, style.css. It has to be named the same way that we see this named here, style.css. It doesn't matter what you name it, but that link, that shortcut link CSS is going to pre-fill it to be style.css. And that's what we recommend you call it. Okay, so it's not absolutely necessary for it to be called style for it to work, but it's a conventional name, so let's just stick with it. And remember, it has to be spelled the same way here as it is here. Okay, once we've connected it, now let's test to see that it's properly connected. So I'm going to write a rule in my CSS that would target and change my H1. If I notice the change has happened, I know my CSS has been properly connected. So what is H1? It's a H1 tag. So let's type in H1 in CSS. And we'll open and close our curly brackets. Here, we'll write our rule. So I'm going to change the color of H1. So I'm going to type in color, red, semicolon. Okay, you need a semicolon after each rule. So I'm going to say this, all the H1s on my page should be the color red. Now let's see if that change is there on our page. And now we have a red H1. Does everyone see that there? Okay, I think now is a good time to just take a quick pause and do a poll check to see how we're doing, how well we're understanding the purpose of CSS and how to connect it. Okay. Okay. So, we have our HTML file, and now we're able to edit our HTML file through our CSS. Why do we separate styling into CSS? Well, the reason we do that is because, well, actually, we can add styling in our HTML. We can add styling here, and we can add styling somewhere in the head at the top. We can add the rules for the styling of different things on our page. But if we write all our styling on our HTML page is going to be cluttered with code. It's going to be hard to decipher, right? We want to just see the bare bones skeleton when we're looking at the HTML. We don't need to see the styling rules. We can put that in another place so that we can debug our code, read our code, share our code with ease without having it cluttered with different types of rules applied all in one area. Let's separate our rule types. If our style is going to take up a huge chunk of code, let's separate it into CSS. Okay, and so now we can target different tags, H1, and we said we can make it color red. And we mentioned that CSS stands for cascading style sheets. So how that applies into how that word cascading, falling from top to bottom, applies in writing CSS is this way. The rule at the bottom, if, for example, if I create another H1 rule and I say the color should be blue, actually, which one is going to take priority? H1 rule that says color should be red?
Bottom.
The bottom one. Yes. And that is how it applies. The rule at the bottom supersedes and overrides the rule at the top, written above. So we're writing our rules from top to bottom, and the rules on the bottom, the ones that we write latest or last, then that will be the rule that applies. So now let's see here. Our H1 is blue. Our H1 is blue. Okay, so that's what cascading means, that the rules at the bottom of our CSS, if they are the same as something that was previously defined, the one at the bottom will take priority. Okay, let's do a poll check again to see if we understand this concept, how the rules apply in CSS, why it's called cascading style sheets. Okay, good. I like the numbers we're seeing here. So let's continue. So we have our folder with our index.html and our style.css in it. All right, so index.html, here it is. Style.css, we've affected color. Now we can change font size as well. So let's see this rule in application. Let's stick with one rule of H1, and then we'll also change the size of the font to be 50 pixels, okay? A pixel is a little unit in your screen that measures green, blue, and red. Changes color, and it mixes with the other pixels on the screen, and it's a measurement of size as well on your screen. You'll just have to get used to estimating about how many size a certain amount of pixels is. The more you play with it, the more you'll understand just by knowing how much 50 pixels is. Okay, so now this is 50 pixels. Let's try 100 pixels. Let's see the difference between 50 and 100. This is 100 pixels. Okay, let's continue. We can, for color names, use 3 different conventions. Okay, we can type in the name of the color. in CSS will most likely have a category for that color predefined. Like I typed in blue and it already gave me a shade of blue. There's also a way to select a color palette here, and it'll give you that combination of red, green, blue. This is another way to identify color by the red, green, blue combination.
And
And
how did you get to that menu? You just click the
I
square?
just hovered over the square and then it gives me this menu here. You can affect its depth of the color itself. You can change the base of the color. So you can work with different colors by the red, green, blue combination. Okay. And besides colors and using color names, we can also affect the size. What if we have, let's change it to H2. Let's change our H1 to H2, and let's change that here as well. If I needed to, let me finish my example here. I need to create another H2. If we wanted one H2, the first one to be red, and the second one to be blue, how can we do that? How could we do that? Anyone have any possible solutions?
Would by class or ID work?
Yes, that's exactly the answer I'm looking for. You can select different properties here in the HTML by giving it a special class or ID. Okay, we're giving it something to target. All right, like let's say here on our slide presentation, when we went to this connect here, if we use the right selector, we find the special thing that we need, and then we connect that rule to it. So we have to give it a special rule. So we're going to say class equals, and let's just give it something descriptive. Second H2. Why not? For now, this is all we need to use to describe our second H2. We're going to give it a class called second H2. Now that it has this identification, how do we target this identification in the CSS? The way we target a class is by typing the dot and then the name of the class, second H2. Now we can say this one should be red. And let's also make this one 100 pixels. So if I see my page now, two H2s, the first one is blue, the second one is red. How did we do that? By giving the second one a class and targeting that class by saying dot and then the class name, opening up the curly brackets and writing the rules inside. You can also do this by an ID. So let's change our class to an ID. The way we would change it is by changing the symbol right in front. Well, we're going to change this dot to the hash symbol. And it does the same thing. Now one is on the top is blue and on the bottom is red. Okay, you can read on selectors on the platform here. Here's the class or the type selector, the H1 or P tag that will target all the H1s or Ps in general. And we have the CSS selector further down the page. And then we have the ID selector. For example, here it's targeting this little ninja by this hashtag symbol. Okay, one last thing before we do a poll check. Who can tell me the difference between an ID and a class selector?
The ID is more specific than the class.
Okay, what do we mean by that?
Has a higher weight.
Yes. So ID has a higher priority in giving rules than a class would. So how about we give this an ID and a class? We'll say class equals, we'll just give it a random name. Moondog. Okay, that's the first thing that came to my mind. So now we're gonna target this class. Gave it a funny name, I know, but it doesn't matter what we call it. I just didn't want to call it second H2 again. So this class is just another class selector. And if we say color should be green, what's going to take priority? The ID that says the color should be red, or this random class here that says that the color should be green? It's going to stay and remain red. Why? Because the ID is more, it's going to take priority over a class. It's more important in the order of rank. Okay, so let's delete our class. Here's another rule about IDs. You cannot use duplicate IDs. So let's just copy this H2. We should have now another H2 below that's red. All right. If we take this HTML, copy it, and paste it into our HTML checker. Okay, so I'll click this one, go to our input, paste it in here. We're going to see an error. And that error is duplicate ID. All right, you're not allowed to have more than one ID with the same name applied to more than one tag on your HTML. Okay. This ID now is unique to wherever it's placed, so no one else can wear this ID. So in general, it's better to use classes over IDs when creating rules. Okay. All right, so let's do a poll check. How well we understand class versus ID and its purpose in selecting specific tags on the page.
Could you show the input again? I mean, the output.
Like the display of it?
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah,
and by the way, everyone, all the code I'm building on lecture will be accessible on this GitHub link on the schedule. So if you want to see what I've built and you just want to play with whatever it is that you see in this recording, you can access it by going to the GitHub. Okay. Not only can we change the font size and color, we can align the text on the page as well. Let's look at this rule here, text align center. Let's apply it to our H2s. All right, let's apply it to this H2, the first one. Text align center. So let's see the difference between the H2 with that applied to it and how it would be without it. This targets both H2s. Both of them are H2s, right? So all the H2s will have text align center. If I wanted to make it specific to the red one, I'll have to put it on the ID selector. So now the red one is center aligned, and this H2 is left alone. This is aligned center in the space that it's allowed to exist in. Okay, if I had it within a div and said that div was going to be smaller than this page, then it would align center within that div within this page. Okay, so we've gone over how to select IDs, how to select classes, a couple rules, how to affect the font size, how to affect the color, and how to center that text in the area that it's concealed in. Okay, so let's take a quick quiz here to make sure that we're paying attention. All right, so based on the code above, which selector would select the first div ID equals title? So see here this ID title. Based on this code, which selector would select this ID title?
Hashtag title.
Okay. And why is that? Because hashtag is meant for ID, right? I answered my own question. Based on the code above, which selector would select the second div class main? So let's look at main. Which one is going to select this one?
Dot main.
Okay. Based on the code above, which selector would select the H1 tag?
First one.
Right? The first one is just a general selector here. Based on the code above, which selector would select all the paragraph tags? Which one would select all the paragraph tags?
Just
First
P of
one.
First option. All right. And last question, based on the code above, which selector would select the anchor tag?
A.
All
A,
of them.
B, C, or all of the
Above.
above? Or none of the above?
All of them.
Let's see our results. Well, okay. Good job, guys. Got them all right. Okay, now let's go into advanced selectors. All right. So we've learned how to select specific items on our page, classes and IDs, general selector. This wildcard selector here is a way to select everything on the page at once, everything at once. And we want to put it at the very top of our page. And it'll give us a view. For example, this rule here, outline 1 pixel solid red. It will outline everything on the page. So let's use this to see what our page would look like with the all selector. It's a wildcard. It will select everything. And now we see red outlines surrounding the sections, the areas our H2s are taking up. This H2 is taking up this bar section with the red line above and below it, as well as the H2 below it. So for every new element we create on our page, a red outline will be created around it. And we did this we said outline everything on our page by saying the all selector. All right, what if we wanted to apply a general font size to everything, right? Right now, we just removed the font sizes for the H2s. What if I say font size 100 pixels on the all selector? Then it would target everything and say that the font size for everything on the page should be 100 pixels. And we get our result back as if we, had our code there. It's working the same. Rule is different, so it's going to apply differently. This is the all selector. Generally, you don't want to put font size in that all selector, but this is how it can work. Targets everything on the page. Okay. So we've covered the all selector, and we want to now transition into how we would use descendant selectors. Okay, descendant selectors. What is that? Okay, let's get into that, but first let's take a poll check. Do we understand how the all selector works? Is that making sense to us right now?
I did have one clarifying question with the all selector and the font size. I know that's something we don't want to usually do. But if you do like a font size change in the all selector while still maintaining like a H2 font size and a class for second H2 font size, would that overall font size in the all selector actually change it, or no, because those classes being identified are going to override because it's cascading further down?
Good question. Let's try it out. Let's experiment. Let's say font size in the H2s in general. Now, after the all selector, we're going to say 50 pixels. And for this specific second H2, we're going to say font size, and we're going to make it 30 pixels. So what do you think is going to happen where I change in view?
I thought is that the ones that are like H2 and second H2 are going to keep whatever we've put in for them because of their priority in class or in cascading.
Okay, so let's see this now. So although we have the all selector saying everything should be 100 pixels, we had a rule following. It said actually all the H2s should be 50 pixels. So it overrode that initial rule that says everything should be font size 100 pixels. So nothing is font size 100 pixels. All the H2s are at least going to be 50. And this specific one, we said we want it to be 30, the one below. How are you?
So the all selector has less weight than the H2s.
Yes, and why in this instance? There's two reasons. Because the H2 and the hashtag ID selector are specific. They're more specific than the general all selector. So that's going to be taking priority for that reason. And the other reason is because it follows it in this order of top to bottom. So remember, the rule on the bottom is going to take priority over the top. Okay. Did
Thanks.
that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Cool.
So if
All
you
right.
had put the,
Yes.
sorry, so if you had put the all selector, even if you placed it at the bottom, the higher weights of the second H2 would still override that, right?
Yep. Look at here. It hasn't changed, even though the all selector is at the bottom. The reason is H2 is more specific than everything, right? So the specific application is going to take priority. And this one's even more specific than that general H2 selector. So even though it's at the bottom, we would imagine it would be taking priority, but no, it's going to only take priority if there's nothing more specific than it as well. Let's move it back to the top. Did that make sense as well?
Yeah, I got it.
Great. Cool. Okay. So look at this quote here. CSS is like chess. You learn the basics in a day and spend a lifetime mastering it. There's so many amazing things people can do with CSS. If you can look up some YouTube videos, they will show you like you can make 3D animations with CSS. I don't know how. There's so many amazing things you can do. We are just going to use it for now to arrange divs on our web page. Okay, and this website's pretty neat as well. So let's go there for a second and see what this is about. css.tricks.com. They help explain concepts pretty easily. They have articles and explanations to different CSS styles and guides and rules. So You can explore this website in your own time. All you need to pass and complete your assignments should be here, though, in your platform. Okay, so we're going to talk about descendant selectors. Let's talk about the parent hierarchy here. Let's create one. I'm going to create a div below. I'm going to create a div. And within this div, I'm going to create H3 that says let's think of something to say, but I'm gonna write a couple things here. Actually, I'm gonna create some divs within some divs. How about that? And I'm gonna say this class equals container, right? This is the container div. And these divs within this container div are going to be the child divs. Okay, so let's make a few children within the container. We have a container holding a couple divs, 3 divs that are sharing the class child. And we created this so we can understand the descendant selector. The descendant selector works like this. Let's make these, instead of divs, let's make them key classes, okay? I'll show you another trick as well. If you hold down Command on your Mac, or I believe it's, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's Alt on the PC, or Control. I'm pretty sure it's Alt though. If you highlight something, hold the Command key on Mac, and then hold it while you're tapping D. It will target everything on VS Code that has the same spelling, and you can target multiple things at once. So all of these divs, I wanted to change them to be P. So I'm going to press the right arrow and delete all at once, and then press P, and I've changed all my div classes to P classes. Okay. And so what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to target this class container, and I want to target all the P classes in my class container. So let's write.
You misspelled container.
Thank you. Let's rewrite it. Okay. So when I write code like this, dot container, and then space, and then P, as long as there are P tags within the container, I'm going to target all of them, all the children here that are P tags. Okay, so I'm going to make these P tags, I'm going to make them color purple, all right? We want purple text. So I'm going to say lorem times 3. Let's copy this text into each of our P tags. And let's see some purple text. Oh, and it's way too big, because we use the all selector. So let's delete this. Okay, and let's delete the red outline as well. Okay, so here's our purple text. We created 3 P tags. We were able to style them by saying, I want all the P tags within this class container. All the children within this class container, I want them to be this color, purple. And that's how we were able to change these P tags to be purple, by using what's called the descendant selector. All right, what happens if I stick a p tag in a div? Let's take this closing. We wrap the first p tag in a div. So now let's look at our page. It's still purple. Why is that? That's because it doesn't need to be a direct descendant. It can be a grandchild of container. It can be a grandchild of container, and it will still work, this descendant selector. This is different than our direct descendant selector. So if I apply, instead of just a space, this caret symbol here, so let's go ahead and apply that. Now we see the first one is black and the following two are purple. Why is that? Because the direct descendant selector says only if you are a direct descendant of this parent class should you have this rule applied to you. This first p tag is within a div, so it would technically be a grandchild of this container, right? It's a direct descendant only of this div. So this div is a direct descendant of container, and therefore its own child cannot have the rule color purple applied to it.
I have a weird question.
Okay.
So what happens if you add a class to the div inside the container?
That wouldn't change anything.
Okay.
Yep. It doesn't even matter that these have the class child. I just put them there so you can see the difference. You can see them clear. Okay. They had no purpose other than just seeing here that these p classes, these p tags have the class child, so we can know that they're a child of this container until they are no longer a direct descendant. So now this is a grandchild compared to these children. This here, direct descendant. Oh, I just lost track of how to spell descendant. Oh, like the word descend. Okay. Okay. Comments, it's still the same shortcut. You can do command / and it will comment out code you need in CSS. So /* / is also the other way to comment in CSS. Okay. Let's take a poll. How well we're understanding selector versus direct descendant selectors. To answer your question, Aaron, you could also make it work with saying so your question is saying if we say class child, all the direct descendants of container that have class child, they should have that rule applied. That could work as well. But that direct descendant selector says only the direct descendants of this parent class that have class child should have it applied to them, this rule applied to them. Does that answer your question, Aaron?
I think so. It's just wondering if you could just, instead of using the P, you could just use different identifiers like the child, or if you had grandchild in there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, let's write child instead of p tag. Okay, I'm going to say all the child classes, which are direct descendants of the container parent, let's see this color purple be applied to it. Okay, and we have no difference because all direct descendants of this container that have class are the last two.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
What if I remove this direct descendant selector? What would happen?
Nothing would change because the other div class, the grandchild, is named grandchild. So I think if you wanted to affect the first one, you would rename the CSS.
Good catch.
Yeah.
Good catch. So
Well, if
this would not
if
change because this is grandchild. You're right. Good catch. But if I change this, now what would happen?
the first paragraph would be purple and they'd all be purple.
Right. They'd all be purple again because it's saying all the classes who are descendant, doesn't matter how far down of the parent class container, should have this rule applied to them. Okay, let's introduce one more thing you guys should be aware of. I'm gonna change the font size as well. I'm gonna say font size 40 pixels. Now we see that I have some sort of error going on here, right? Semicolon is highlighted with this underline, this red underline. The last selector has it underlined with this red squiggly. What's going on? The reason is because I didn't add a semicolon here. So every rule needs a semicolon. And then you'll ask me, but this one doesn't need a semicolon. And that's because it's the very last one. This one doesn't need it, but it's a good habit to put a semicolon on every single rule. If a rule here doesn't have, if one preceding it doesn't have a semicolon on it, then we're not going to see anything work properly. All right, let's break it. Let's reload our page and see what happens. Okay, it's broken, right? It doesn't read properly. So let's put it back and we get the result that we need. Okay. And we're running out of time. So let's see here. The last thing we want to go over is this selectors game. This is a way that you can practice your skills selecting different elements on a page, on an HTML file. It's kind of not the
Can
right
you do the
step.
first one? Because that game kind of cheats. I don't understand it.
Yes. Let's refresh this. I want to open this on the link itself. Game source. Here we are. Oh no, that's not the source. Here we are. So we want to get to this page to play. Select all the things, right? All the things. How do we select everything?
Asterisk.
Yep. So let's select everything. And then press enter when you're done. Oh, what do we want to do? What did we do wrong?
I don't think it even wants the brackets.
Yeah, it's just star.
Oh, that's it? Okay. Select everything on a plate. So if we hover our mouse over here, we see that there's a plate selector, right? Sorry, go ahead.
I think it's plate asterisk.
Select everything on a plate. What if I say on a plate? Oh, I see. Okay. What if I type in plate like this? No? Okay, let's do the other recommendation. Plate asterisk. Okay. So I don't want to beat every level in this game while you guys are watching me. But here I'm on level 12. You wanted to see level 1? Let's see. Select the plates. So I'll say plate. All right. Then we know we would have to open up the styles. It's already opened up for us here on 2 to 4. That's what I just noticed. So we got to assume that this is already opened up. We just have to write the correct selector here. Select the bento boxes. We see here on the HTML, there's a class, there's a tag here that says bento. So if I type in bento, next level. Okay, so you guys have this game. It's linked here in your platform selectors game. It's a good way to practice how to select different things on the HTML page. Okay, so that's it for this morning's lecture. We've had a nice I hope it was nice introduction to CSS. We're going to have some time to work on our assignments during this open lab. You have an hour to take lunch whenever you need before 2 Mountain Time, which is when we will be introducing the box model, an inline block, how to arrange divs on our page as blocks. Okay, so again,
So lunch is in 30 minutes, right?
You don't have to take it exactly at 12 Mountain Time, but that's the recommended hour. You know, after you work a little bit after this lecture, solidify the knowledge you just learned on the assignments. So you're grounding it in, then take a lunch, and then come back, work some more until 2 Mountain Time, which is when we'll do the next lecture, and we'll break out into groups to do a group project today. Okay, and again, the end of the day goals are styling, button up, and plotting your blocks. Anyone have any questions? Okay, we'll stop the share and the recording, and I'll see you guys in my room if you need me. I'm going to break out the groups right now. 1 second.